Kane, I need reinforcements. You must send help.
You'll find there is surprisingly little I must do, General Vega.
Kane, I served you for years.
Emergency deployment. Immediate launch. Perhaps when McNeil arrives to kill you, you'll take some time to learn from the man. I'm sure he'll teach you lessons you'll carry with you the rest of your life. Which, by the way, is about 7 minutes.
I'm dead.
Alright, you sorry bastard. Before that crap fries your brain, you're gonna tell me what happened to the rest of that ship. What happened to the technology that you and Kane stole off that UFO?
King didn't steal it. He made it. He's got the Tacitus.
What does Kane have? What is a Tacitus?
Sir, I have some very bad news.
Nod forces have broken through our European perimeters, Mac. They've taken Hammerfest.
Hammerfest?
We think they're after our disruptor technology, the sonic crystals. I need your forces ready for immediate deployment. Destroy everything Nod has there. Get them off our base!
Mac, wasn't your brother in Hammerfest?
Nod has taken over much of our Hammerfest base in their search for the disruptor. Nod has reactivated the perimeter to prevent GDI from attacking. Water assault remains your only option. Find the Firestorm defense structure generating the perimeter and deactivate it. Only then can reinforcements arrive. Proceed to destroy Nod's primary base and prevent them from attacking again. Establishing battlefield control. Stand by.
Welcome back, Commander.
Engineering. No problem, sir.
So, there's a lot to unpack with that entire cutscene.
Moving out.
I guess, well, it should probably be expected that Kane's kind of ruthless versus even his own troops.
Unit reporting.
To be fair, Vega did kind of screw everything up, so, you know. In fact, we'll actually learn a little bit more as to just how much he screwed up in future videos.
Sir? Unit ready. On my way out.
I have to admit, it's a little annoying that the game would mention stuff about the disruptor technology. Mostly because you don't really get to see it. Not this level anyways.
Unit reporting.
On the plus side though, we're given the Hover MRLS, which is one of the better units in the GDI arsenal.
On my way.
It suffers from one main drawback, really. And
yes, sir.
it's the same drawback that just about any unit with a projectile, like rockets, suffers from. Namely that the rockets kind of take a strange path. The way that the projectiles move is unpredictable, to say the least. And it makes it really hard to be able to attack from below a target.
Unit reporting.
It's the same sort of effect you'd see from, say, a Nod Tic Tank. The only difference is that rockets really seem to have a mind of their own as to just where they'll move.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's a few interesting things
Sir?
to avoid talking about the cutscenes for a little bit. A lot of interesting stuff about this map in particular. One, obviously, with the hover MRLSs, the map I find is beautifully built to demonstrate their strengths. They fly over terrain, so you never have to worry about whether there's water or not. Another big advantage is that you can see that there's ice. The ice is a dangerous thing to ever try to cross. The main thing to remember about it, or to think about, is that ice has, I guess, two different states. In the first, it's more of a solid object. You can kind of see patches here and there. Basically, if you can see it and it doesn't have like cracks on it, and it looks mostly solid, it's most likely the case. Now, a vehicle that happens to drive or move on top of that ice will cause that ice to crack. And if you persist, either, I believe if you keep a vehicle on there for too long, but also if you happen to, say, move a second vehicle onto cracked ice, say if you have a convoy or something, it will break, and you can kiss whatever investment you had goodbye.
Unit ready.
It gets to be fairly annoying, because while it's nice to have that sort of traversability, it does impact just what you can and cannot bring.
Unit ready. Waiting order.
The biggest issue I have really with ice is that in the event that you do happen to move units across, sometimes the pathing will mess with you to the point where you can, again, just kiss whatever investment you have goodbye as it slowly sinks into the bottom of the river.
Unit reporting. Waiting orders.
It's also hard not to, state just how nice the progression has been so far.
Waiting order.
Games like Command & Conquer, I don't feel have had a huge number of variety.
Unit ready.
It's kind of the caveat you have to have with real-time strategy games. You've got maybe a dozen, maybe 15 units, and it's hard to really expand a list bigger than that. So to be able to make a campaign and always bring in something new from time to time shows that there's at least a lot of good effort by the developers to, keep things fresh at all times.
Moving out. You got it. Waiting order. Unit reporting. Unit ready.
I waste a couple good heals here because, well, to be fair to myself, I didn't remember if that was a heal or not, and this game doesn't have any sort of tell.
Unit ready.
In Red Alert, you knew what you would get, kind of, like minus an exception or two.
Yes, sir.
Also, because I didn't destroy the last power plant, I have to backtrack a little bit.
Unit reporting.
But yeah, Tiberian Sun doesn't have any sort of indicator
Waiting orders.
Unit lost.
for healing, or for what the crate contains. And, well, playing on fastest, I've already mentioned, is impossible to do. And as a result, I've lost a third of my combat forces so far.
Sir?
Thankfully, while these levels are hard, they're not extremely punishing.
Waiting orders.
And
Waiting orders.
I mean, as long as you save every once in a while, it's generally fine.
Yes, sir. Unit ready. Waiting orders. Unit reporting. Waiting orders. Unit reporting. Unit ready. Unit reporting. Unit ready. Sir. No.
It's important to note that hover MRLSs are sort of a good thing to combine with Wolverine, as they both share a very high initial speed. The obvious benefit for the hover MLSs is that since they can go just about anywhere, they kind of will outpace Wolverines at times. But the two working together really helps to balance balance the cost of your forces, while also being able to, say, take out infantry without too much issue. However, MLRSs in and of themselves are just very terrible against anything that's light. Infantry, especially rocket infantry, are the biggest things to worry about.
On my way. Waiting orders.
I forget if I'll ever even mouse over it long enough to be able to at least display it. But in the rules ini file, the Harbor MRLS costs, I should probably just call them MRLSs, they cost $900, which is more than a Titan. So you kind of have to know, how you want to balance your forces. It should also be noted that MRLSs are not as heavily armored as Titans.
Unit reporting.
The game categorizes their armor as wood,
Yes, sir.
and
Unit ready.
frankly, I don't remember what the difference is,
Sir,
because there's a couple different armor types.
on my way. Unit reporting. No problem.
From memory, there's none, light, wood,
Yes,
I
sir.
believe concrete, heavy,
Sir,
and I think that might be it.
unit ready. Unit ready. Unit ready.
Yeah, none, light, wood, heavy, and
Waiting
concrete.
orders. Unit reporting.
The way that it's written in the rules ini file implies that concrete is the toughest,
Waiting orders.
but I'm not entirely sure as to what that
Yes, sir.
truly dictates.
Sir. Waiting orders.
I'm sure if I bother going way deep into the rules ini file, I'll probably be able to find out, but regardless,
Sir.
the MRLS is just not something you want taking shots. Which works out a little well, because it does have some good range,
Away.
but, well, you'll probably want to stutter your shots a lot.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Unit reporting. Sir, unit reporting. Unit ready. Unit ready. Waiting orders. You got it, sir. Unit ready. Unit reporting. Waiting orders. Sir. Unit ready. Waiting orders. Unit reporting. Unit reporting. Sir? On my way. Yes, sir. Unit ready. Sir? Awaiting orders.
I should also mention that ice that happens to crack but does not break or fall through can
Unit ready.
quote-unquote
Waiting orders.
regenerate.
Unit reporting.
And as far as I know, ice in general should be able to form.
Waiting orders. Unit ready. Sir? 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 Sir?
And as we've seen numerous times with the Amphibious APC, there are some vehicles that will cause cracks, but won't break through ice.
Sir?
Just for no matter what you do.
Unit reporting. Moving out. Sir? Unit reporting. Unit ready. Unit reporting. Unit ready. Sir? Unit reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. No problem. Sir? Orders received. Orders received. Yes, sir. On my way. No problem. Unit reporting.
It doesn't look like it, but that concrete wall was just not broken.
Orders received, sir.
The way that it's displayed and the angle, the isometric angle that we're at, just makes it really hard to spot if a wall is destroyed or not.
Waiting
It's
order.
a little.
Unit reporting. Yes, sir. You got it.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Building
Waiting
captured.
order. No problem.
Sir. No problem.
Building
Waiting
captured.
orders.
Waiting orders. Yes, sir. Waiting orders. Sir? Sir? Yes, sir.
Engineering affirmative. Engineering affirmative.
Unit reporting. You got it. Yes, sir. On my way. Waiting orders. Yes, sir. Unit reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. Unit ready. Unit reporting. Yes, sir. You got it.
Building captured.
Awaiting orders.
New construction options.
Unit reporting.
Base under attack. Building online.
Waiting orders.
So this is Hammerfest Base.
Building online.
It's safe to say that Nod didn't really feel the need to keep the upkeep going for their prized possession.
Sir? On my way.
Thankfully, though, we're at least given a lot of money to work with, so building up isn't too hard. Sadly, though, your best bet is to sell the Firestorm sections at the nearby bridges.
Low power. Building
Sir.
online.
On my way. Yes, sir.
Unit ready.
Sir? Yes, sir. Moving out.
And,
Unit ready.
by the way, you probably don't want to sell one of your refineries.
On my way.
You've got so much money that it might overflow whatever silos you have.
Unit reporting. Unit reporting. No problem.
And, well, because we're starting with an already built base, and there's not much else you can really do other than rebuild. So, well, let's cut through most of it. The one thing to note with regards to the new unit, aka the MLRS, is that the elite ability for it is that it self-heals, which is great. There's no reason not to take advantage of it. There's the same problem that most people have already mentioned in the thread, being that it's hard to keep certain units alive that long. This also goes hand in hand with the fact that until now, well, until the previous level anyways, we didn't really have anything to repair vehicles. So you always run through that sort of problem as well. I'm just a sucker for Titans, so I always build them. Although, again, there's nothing really stopping you from using MRLSs a lot. As long as you can keep your distance, which is easier to do with MRLSs than Titans, you're generally okay. And at least in this map in particular, there's a lot of opportunities for you to abuse their mobility, so to speak. I believe it's also the first time we've seen the rocket-propelled grenade launcher for the defensive structure. It's actually a very handy weapon, and basically acts as the GDI's anti-vehicle slash armor something. So we should probably talk about that cutscene. It's important to note that, again, Kane has a sort of disdain for anybody that's going to fail him, which is understandable of a crazy megalomaniac that is trying to control the world, conquer the world, probably better thing to do. And, well, it's interesting that he chooses just to nuke Vega. I guess the idea is that, well, if you nuke him, you probably won't have much in terms of information left, which was the entire purpose of GDI attacking the Minimans. Another thing is the fact that, well, we start having things like talking about McNeil's brother, which I don't want to say is a weird thing to include, because it's not really, but it's nice to know that there's a little bit more characterization so far for McNeil. I have to admit that every time I see that cutscene where Vega's, pumping his eye full of drugs, people probably these days wouldn't recognize it, but it really looks like a just an old camera canister, film canister, because he doesn't really do anything to it. He just kind of rotates it a little. Oh, and here's the beauty of the EMP cannon.
Sir, you got it, sir. On my way, sir.
And it turns out I was right the first time. They can't attack. It's another thing that prevents movement, but not attack.
Awaiting orders. Unit reporting. Awaiting orders.
Oh, and thankfully I get to also show off the fact that it stops harvesters.
Sir, on my way. Sir.
And considering that I was only getting attacked once I started attacking the harvester, it also proves the point of the EMP not triggering the AI's defense, protocols, I guess we call them.
Unit ready. Unit reporting. Sir. Waiting orders. Sir.
Unit lost.
Yes, sir. On my way, sir. Waiting orders. No. Sir, you on my way.
After a while, you just get kind of morbidly used to hearing squishing sounds.
Sir.
Unit lost.
Waiting orders. Orders received. Unit ready. On my way. Sir. Sir.
Building.
Sir. Sir. Waiting orders. On my way. Unit ready.
Unit
On my
lost.
way. Sir. Sir.
Unit
Unit
lost.
ready. Unit ready. Sir.
Unit ready.
Unit ready. Yes, sir.
Unit
Sir.
lost.
Orders received.
Unit lost.
Yes, sir. Unit reporting.
Yeah, no matter how many Titans you have, well, I guess probably not the case, but even with a large force of Titans, it's problematic trying to bust through certain defenses.
Select.
It also really doesn't help when the AI is basically threatening me with 6 artillery units.
Yes, sir. Moving out.
Unit ready.
Out and clear.
Unit ready.
Select target.
Awaiting orders. Awaiting orders. Sir.
Harvester.
On my
attack.
way. Unit ready. On my way.
Infantry reporting. and clear. Moving out.
Unit ready.
Moving out.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready. Unit reporting. Moving out. Unit reporting.
Unit ready.
Unit reporting.
Sir.
Unit reporting. You
Unit
got it.
lost.
Waiting order.
I know there's been complaints already. This is only the second time we see artillery. I know there's been complaints about them.
Unit
I get it. Personally, I'm not a fan of the fact that they have perfect accuracy. And, it's not wrong when it comes to the fact that, they're programmed that way. So, obviously, the developers knew that this was something that they're putting into the game.
Loud and clear.
But you also have to kind of see it as
Loud and moving out.
they kind of need something that good on defense.
Waiting orders. Waiting orders.
The other problem too is that the jump jet infantry I have are just fucking floating around there. Guys, shoot, please. You're breaking my heart here.
Unit reporting.
I even said I love you guys.
Unit ready. Moving out.
Okay, so this is the problem with jump jet infantry, and why they're kind of a joke sometimes.
ready. Unit ready.
And also, if it wasn't made clear already, there's that huge issue with the EMP cannon where it's the range is very, very small. Anyways, I think the main issue really for the artillery is that you see them early enough in the GDI campaign that it doesn't feel like you have a counter to them. Orca fighters don't even get me started. They're garbage. I know it's harsh to say that, but I just don't like them.
Base.
So I never really bother ever getting any. I know they can be used as an alternative to Titans, or I guess MLRSs too. But there's something missing there, And so you kind of have to use you kind of have to use jump jet infantry to get close to them without being vulnerable. But obviously that sort of implies that they can't have any sort of air defense, which unfortunately in our case they do. And jump jet infantry aren't tough enough to be able to survive many, many strikes from SAM sites.
Unit ready.
Because by the time
Sir.
that you actually get on top of your target and you start shooting at it, and you shoot at it enough to be able to kill it, etc., etc., even a SAM site can do a considerable amount of damage, which ends up just being cost inefficient, I guess we'll put it simply.
Construction complete.
Waiting orders. Unit ready.
Thankfully, though, this level, again, is built around the MLRS in at least a major way.
Unit ready.
It's not obviously solely built around it, but you kind of want to take advantage of what the game gives you.
Waiting orders.
And, well, we've already seen time and time again, waterways are definitely a thing that we've been given. So, you should probably explore it a little bit.
Sir, moving out. Yes, sir. Waiting orders. Moving out. Sir.
Not every map has any sort of expanding terrain that just comes out of nowhere and just adds territory to your game. But that shouldn't deter you ever from exploring. I remember saying it a long time ago, I believe it was episode 2, where the game does a really nice job of mixing things up and always giving you at least one extra avenue of completing something.
Sir.
There's exceptions here and there, always. You can't you're never going to have some sort of perfect system. But what the game does present you is very well done, in my opinion.
Unit ready.
Building.
Infantry reporting.
Unit ready. Moving out.
Yes, sir.
Awaiting orders.
So the idea for me is that, okay, I've discovered a bridge that clearly must lead to the rear of the enemy base. So I might as well throw my entire force that way, and hope that I'll be able to
Yes, sir.
avoid getting shot by artillery a lot. And so far that seems to be the case. If I was anywhere near artillery at the bridge, or at least the very southern bridge, then artillery should have shot at it. Because the AI is not really good at holding off on doing something.
Firestorm defense online.
Awaiting orders.
Unit ready.
Unit reporting. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was the Firestorm defense. Unfortunately, it doesn't come into play in this game, or in this level whatsoever. And it also, there's kind of like a counterfactual, I guess, presented in this level.
Got it.
The first being that Nod forces, just due to the way the level is built, can have the Firestorm defense up permanently. It doesn't matter how long you take to get to the base, they will always be able to have that thing running. Which obviously is false. There has to be some timer on it, or else it'd just be too good. And I say too good because the Firestorm defense is impregnable to any weapon. There might be something that could theoretically shoot through, I think, but we're not there yet to see just exactly what that is. And, well, subterranean units can't go under it, so there's that caveat. Otherwise, though, every last tile can become immediately invincible as soon as you turn on the defense system.
On my way.
Which means it's very important to understand that sort of power and ability that it has. Because, well, without spoiling anything, it'll become very useful in the future. As always, if you don't want to have to deal with tick tanks on high ground and a choke point and artillery, just find an alternate route into the base. There's always a sort of critical mass at some point in Command & Conquer games that as soon as you start to win with it, you're generally cleared to win the entire level with it. Although I guess that's technically true of most games. It also helps that this is, a single-player level, so it doesn't have the same sort of intelligence that the AI would have in a multiplayer map. Oh, and I really don't know where that artillery, how that's set up there. Because I don't remember that being there in the first place, but maybe I just forgot. That's probably the more likely response. Or answer.
Loud and clear.
Oh, and an important thing to note is that gates don't count for buildings, but laser fences do.
Mission